The Barrett? Old man, that rifle weighs 30 pounds and kicks like a mule. Why don't you try something more your speed, like a 22? The recruit's words were met with howls of laughter across the range. The elderly man standing before them just smiled quietly and waited. What happened in the next 8 minutes would be replayed at every Marine sniper school for the next decade. Type legend if you respect those who've earned their reputation through action, not words. Sunday mornings at Camp Pendleton's precision rifle range had a different rhythm than weekdays. It was reserved time, open to qualified personnel for practice and certification maintenance, usually quieter, more focused. Barrett Jordan had been coming here almost every Sunday for the past 3 years since moving back to California, a ritual that kept him connected to the life he'd left behind. At 68 years old, he looked like someone's grandfather, silver-haired and lean, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades spent in harsh climates. He drove an old Ford pickup, wore faded jeans and a Marine's t-shirt that had seen too many washes, and moved with the careful deliberation of someone whose body had absorbed too many hard landings and long marches. This particular Sunday, the range was busier than usual. A new class of Marine recruits, fresh from completing basic reconnaissance training, had been granted range time as part of their advanced marksmanship qualification. 23 young Marines, most barely in their 20s, full of the confidence that comes from being told you're among the elite. They'd been setting up their rifles, mostly M40s and some newer precision systems, talking loudly about their qualification scores, sharing stories of their best shots. The atmosphere was competitive, energetic, slightly chaotic with youth and testosterone. Barrett signed in at the Rangemaster's station, exchanging quiet greetings with Gunnery Sergeant Paul Martinez, who'd been running this range for 15 years. "Your usual lane, Mr. Jordan?" Martinez asked. "Actually, Paul, I was hoping to use one of the Barrett M82s today, if any are available." Martinez's face lit up. "For you? Absolutely. Bay 7 has one ready to go." He pulled out keys to the weapons locker. The Barrett M82, or Light 50 as it was known, was a semi-automatic 50 caliber sniper rifle, a massive weapon designed for extreme long-range engagement and anti-material work. It wasn't commonly used for casual practice. As Martinez retrieved the weapon, several of the young recruits noticed. Corporal Danny Price, a 22-year-old who'd scored expert in his basic marksmanship quals, nudged his buddies. "Yo, check out Grandpa. He wants the 50 cal." Snickers rippled through the group. Another recruit, Jenkins, called out loud enough for Barrett to hear. "Sir, you sure about that? The Barrett's not exactly a beginner's rifle. It's got some serious kick to it." Barrett turned, his expression mild. "I appreciate your concern, son. I'll be careful." This only increased the laughter. Price stepped closer, his tone condescending in the way young men sometimes are when they mistake kindness for weakness. "No offense, Pops, but that thing weighs more than 30 pounds. The recoil alone could knock you on your ass. Why don't you stick with something lighter? We've got some nice AR platforms that might be more suitable." Barrett simply smiled, that quiet, patient smile that said more than words could. "I'll manage." "Thank you." Martinez handed over the Barrett M82, and Barrett accepted it with practiced ease, carrying it to lane 7 despite its considerable weight. The recruits watched, some with their phones out now, anticipating what they assumed would be entertaining footage of an old man struggling with a weapon beyond his capability. Barrett set up methodically, his movements efficient despite his age. He was preparing for the long-range targets, adjusting the scope for distances that made several of the observing Marines raise their eyebrows. "Is he seriously going for the 1,500-meter targets right off the bat?" someone muttered. "This is gonna be good," Price said, his phone recording. What none of these young Marines knew, what they had no way of knowing because it was before their time and they hadn't studied their Corps' history closely enough, was that the man they were mocking was the reason they even had access to the Barrett M82 in their training. Barrett Jordan wasn't just a veteran. He was a living legend who'd operated so far beyond classified that most of his service record remained sealed. He'd been one of the first Marines to field test the Barrett M82 in combat conditions during the Gulf War, had helped write the manual for its tactical employment, and had more confirmed long-range eliminations with the weapon than any Marine in history. Barrett settled into position, the massive rifle steady despite its size. He didn't rush. He read the wind, checked his scope, adjusted for the morning air temperature and humidity. The range had gone somewhat quieter now, the recruits distracted by the unusual sight. Then Barrett fired. The Barrett M82's report was thunderous, a sound that commanded attention, that made several recruits actually flinch. 1,500 meters downrange, the steel target rang clearly, perfect center hit. Before anyone could fully process it, Barrett fired again. Another hit. He was working quickly now. Efficiently, the semi-automatic action of the Barrett allowing rapid follow-up shots. Third shot, 1,500 meters, another hit. But now Barrett was adjusting between shots, increasing his range. Fourth shot, 1,600 meters, hit. Fifth shot, 1,700 meters, hit. The recruits had stopped talking entirely. Martinez stood behind Barrett, his face showing a mixture of pride and satisfaction, knowing what was coming. Sixth shot, 1,800 meters, hit. Seventh shot, 1,900 meters, hit. The precision was inhuman, impossible. Each shot found its mark at progressively longer ranges, Barrett compensating on the fly for variables that would confound most shooters, moving through distances like he was reading sheet music. That's when the staff car pulled up. Not just any car, but one with 2-star flags. Major General Raymond Clark emerged, followed by Brigadier General Susan Torres. They'd been on base for an inspection and had stopped by the range specifically because Martinez had quietly called them when he'd seen Barrett arrive. They stood back, watching as Barrett fired his 8th shot. 2,000 meters, hit. 9th shot, 2,100 meters, hit. The final shot, Barrett paused longer, made minute adjustments to his scope. 2,200 meters, well over a mile. The shot cracked out, and after a delay that felt eternal, the distant ring of steel echoed back. 10 shots, 10 hits, ranges from 1,500 to 2,200 meters. Not a single miss. Barrett cleared the weapon, set it down carefully, and stood slowly, his back protesting the position he'd held. The range was absolutely silent. General Clark approached, his expression grave but his eyes showing deep respect. He stopped directly in front of Barrett and rendered a sharp salute. "Gunny Jordan, it's an honor to have you on our range, sir." Barrett returned the salute. "General Clark, General Torres, good to see you both." Torres stepped forward. "Marines, front and center. Now." Her voice carried command that had the recruits scrambling to form up. They stood at attention, confusion evident on their faces. Clark addressed them, his voice carrying across the range. "Do any of you recognize this man?" Silence. Uncertain headshakes. Clark continued, his tone hard. "This is Barrett Jordan, gunnery sergeant, retired. He served 26 years in Marine Corps reconnaissance and scout sniper units. He has 3 Navy Crosses, 2 Silver Stars, and a classified number of confirmed long-range eliminations that remain sealed because the missions themselves remain classified. He was one of the first operational testers of the Barrett M82 system in 1991. He helped develop the training doctrine every one of you learned. The rifle is literally nicknamed after him in some circles because of his legendary proficiency with it." Price felt like the ground was opening beneath him. Jenkins had gone pale. Clark wasn't finished. "Gunny Jordan holds the Marine Corps record for the longest confirmed elimination, 2,280 meters, Kuwait, 1991. A shot that saved an entire platoon. He's trained at least 40% of our current scout sniper instructors. He's a walking legend of Marine Corps marksmanship." The general's gaze swept across the assembled recruits, all of whom now looked like they wanted to disappear. And some of you thought it would be funny to mock him. Barrett raised a hand gently. "General, if I may." Clark nodded. Barrett looked at the young Marines, his expression kind rather than angry. "At ease, Marines. You didn't know. How could you? I'm just an old man in civilian clothes showing up on a Sunday. You saw someone who didn't fit your image of what a shooter should look like, and you made assumptions. It's a natural mistake." Price found his voice, stepping forward. "Sir, Gunny, there's no excuse. What we said, how we acted, it was disrespectful and wrong. I apologize, sir. We all do." Barrett nodded slowly. "I accept your apology, Corporal. But let me ask you something. If I'd walked in here in my dress blues, if you'd known who I was, would you have treated me differently?" "Yes, sir," Price admitted. "That's the problem," Barrett said quietly. "Respect shouldn't come from knowing someone's rank or record. It should be default. You don't know what anyone has done, what they've survived, what they carry. That old man you dismiss might be a Medal of Honor recipient. That quiet woman in the corner might have saved lives you'll never know about. Treat everyone with the respect you'd show the commandant until they prove they don't deserve it, not the other way around." General Torres spoke up. "Gunny Jordan has agreed to run a workshop series for our scout sniper schools. But before he does that, he's graciously agreed to spend the rest of today working with you Marines, teaching you what real precision shooting looks like, if you're willing to learn." The response was immediate and unanimous. "Yes, ma'am," they responded in unison. Barrett smiled. "Good, then let's get started. First lesson, respect your weapon, respect your craft, and respect everyone you meet until they give you reason not to. Second lesson, shooting isn't about strength or youth. It's about patience, discipline, and understanding. Now, who wants to learn how to really use a Barrett M82? The rest of that Sunday became legendary at Camp Pendleton. Barrett Jordan, the man they'd mocked, spent 8 hours teaching those young Marines more about precision shooting than they'd learned in months of training. He was patient, thorough, and generous with knowledge that most experts would hoard. He showed them not just how to shoot, but how to think like a sniper, how to read terrain and wind and atmosphere, how to make shots that seemed impossible. Price and Jenkins became his most attentive students, their earlier mockery transformed into genuine hunger to learn from a true master. By day's end, every one of those Marines could hit targets they'd never dreamed possible. More importantly, they'd learned humility. They'd learned that skill and experience don't always announce themselves. They'd learned that the greatest among us often walk quietly, without fanfare, content to let their actions speak when the moment requires it. When Barrett finally packed up his gear and prepared to leave, the Marines insisted on walking him to his truck, asking questions, thanking him, requesting his contact information for future guidance. As Barrett drove away in his old Ford, General Clark turned to the assembled Marines. "Remember this day. Remember that you almost missed the opportunity to learn from greatness because you judged by appearance rather than character. Don't make that mistake again." The lesson resonated far beyond that Sunday. The story spread through the Marine Corps, shared in training classes, told to new recruits as a warning and inspiration. A photograph from that day, showing Barrett with his Barrett M82 surrounded by attentive young Marines, now hangs in the Scout Sniper School headquarters with a simple caption: "Respect is earned in silence. Legends walk among us. Pay attention." Subscribe to our channel if you believe that true excellence doesn't need to announce itself, that the greatest warriors often carry their achievements quietly, and that every person you meet deserves your respect until they prove otherwise. Because you never know when you're standing in the presence of living history.